Hello, I'm Felipe Hoffa at Google Developer Relations, and I help developers manage and analyze their big data as they could never before using Google tools. A few weeks ago, I received a challenge via Twitter from Graham Polly in Australia. Check it out.
Hey Felipe, possible requirement. One table, 30 billion rows, 30 terabytes of data. No problem for BigQuery, right?
30 terabytes of data, 30 billion rows in a single query? My response was, challenge accepted. And well, turns out Graham flew all the way from Australia to our Mona View studios to take me up on my word. Follow me to meet Luke Alexander and Graham Polly from Chime Technologies, where we will learn where did they get these 30 terabytes of data, what's the business behind their project, and how well BigQuery is working for them. And of course, we'll find out if BigQuery is up to the 30 terabytes, 30 billion rows challenge. Let's find out right now. Thank you for coming all the way from Australia. Graham Polly, Luke Alexander, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you too. Let's get down to business. Can you tell me what is Shine Technologies? What are you doing there?
Yeah, sure. So, Shine Technology, we're an IT consultancy based out of Melbourne, Australia. We're about 55 developers, and we work with most of the major large corporates in Australia. One of which is Telstra, who we're going to be talking a bit about today.
Telstra. That's where you are getting your 30 terabytes of data?
That's right. So Telstra's one of Australia's largest ISPs, and it's also a large digital publisher. And that's where we get this data from. We serve ads onto the major digital properties, and those ad impression logs create a large volume of data.
Yeah. That's double-click data? What?
Yeah, so this is all served by Google DoubleClick. And we process the log files on the back of those, both the impressions and the clicks.
So you're getting a high amount of clicks, of impressions?
Yeah, so we do 2,000 requests a second at peak, plus clicks on top of that. And that translates to about 3 billion transactions a month at peak.
Wow. And how were you handling this before knowing BigQuery?
Yeah, badly, with a lot of difficulty. So we knew that there was a real opportunity with the data that we were seeing, that there was a lot of data that was used in those logs that we weren't able to extract any other way. So we used to try and process them. We'd have bash scripts which would cut up the logs, throw away 90% of it, because we could only handle about 10% of the volume. We'd then split up the data, push it into relational databases, and try and use the data from there. But, we blew up disks, ran out of space, saturated networks, blew up table spaces, got called in the middle of the night.
I didn't get called, he got called.
Yeah, so it was hard work.
Yeah, but I think everyone has felt that once.
Absolutely.
And that was a year ago. You had no idea that BigQuery was not on your map.
No, so we came across BigQuery when we moved to DoubleClick. We found that by default, the log files that we were receiving from DoubleClick were being written to the Google Cloud. So that made us have a bit of a poke around and see what we could do. Saw the BigQuery thing, thought this looks like it could do the job. Maybe this dream can come true. So we thought we'd give it a try.
How was that? How did you try?
Well, we took some real data. It was fascinating. We took some real data. Graham and I sat down. Cup of coffee, 2 hours later, we'd proven the problem. The big problem was, can we handle the volume and can we handle the type of data? We have some of the targeting options from DFP come through in a large string of key value pairs, and we needed to extract that data and treat it more like columns. That was a big challenge for us, along with the data. But within 2 hours, we had a working copy of real data. And
so in 2 hours you had your proof of concept. That was all you needed.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We were just blown away. We just sat down, like Luke said, and we just pulled in a small data set first, just to see if we could extract that data out, those 3 columns, and then we pulled down a month's worth of data, and we just went run, and it blew us away.
It did. It was amazing.
And suddenly you were running regular expressions,
yes,
over 2 billion records.
2 billion.
Yeah. So with that you went to your client. You told them,
this is possible. Yeah.
We can do this.
Yeah.
And then it translated into a real project. You sold the project. You had the.
Yeah. So then it was a case of being able to take that, and produce the reporting on the back of it that the client were really excited about. They wanted to take this as an offering back to their advertisers. There were some real great data insights that we could provide, and they were really keen to see that this now wasn't going to be a massive IT project. This is something that they could actually do with a small IT budget.
And how long did the project take?
So the project took about 6 months. Gathering requirements, working out what we were doing with the data, how we were going to display it, what data we wanted to overlay on what, and some of the normal operational modes of the data, how we're processing it, when we're processing it, when we're cleaning it up, and those kind of things.
So what's the project about? What does the Telstra get from this?
Yeah, so the key benefit that Telstra gets is being able to tell its advertisers what are the people that are seeing those ads, what are the demographics. So we've got age, income, the state that they're in, the time of day that they're in, that they saw their ad, and we can overlay those metrics against each other, and we can really show advertisers who was seeing their ads, who was responding to it, was it meeting their target demographics that they were trying to hit for, what other things they could possibly try in the future, different targeting options, amazing stuff.
So now you're able to look at the data, dice it, understand what happened, who's clicking.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's a real end user tool that runs and returns in seconds, so the clients can generate their own reports as they want them, and it's essentially giving them large volumes of data represented in nice forms in the click of a button.
They can dig deeper on demand wherever they want.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. And then you wrote a blog post about this.
Right, so one of the things working at Shine Technologies is that they encourage engineers to talk about and write about technologies that we're working on, bleeding edge technologies. And I just found BigQuery just blew me away, and I wanted to write about it. So I put pen to paper and wrote a blog post, and I didn't really think much of it. I thought it was a good blog post, and it had some pretty big numbers in there. But it just gained a bit of traction. I think you picked it up and you shared it.
I remember reading that blog post, and it was like, on one hand, amazing. On the other hand, there were some criticism.
Yeah, okay. It can't be completely lopsided. So.
Yeah, of course. No, it was a very fair review. I guess you were very happy with the latest news from BigQuery.
Yeah. So a couple of things with the latest news as well. So we're getting now, we found out yesterday 100,000 streaming inserts a second, which is just phenomenal, right? And also, one of the things that when we were writing our SQL queries and refining those SQL queries for this project, we couldn't do multiple joins. And we found
you had to do nested queries to get.
Yeah, we had to do nested queries.
I've been there.
Yeah, and that was a little bit, you work around those nuances, but fabulous news that we can do that now as well.
That is gone. Now you have views too. Those are
views, table decorators, and it's phenomenal. And
the 85% pricing decrease was a big difference to us as well.
Pricing that blew me off.
Yeah, 85% is just it's incredible.
So you wrote the blog post.
Yeah, so
you got the traction.
Right. So then after you had found it, just a few days later, I found out that Urs Hulse had picked it up and put it on his Google Plus page, and he just shared it and said, take a look at this blog post. It's a good read.
It's amazing. You've been giving talks now.
We got invited, myself and another engineer, we got invited then to do a few talks around Melbourne, which have gone really well, and we've got another few in the pipeline as well. So it's phenomenal. We weren't expecting that from the blog post. It was really cool. Now,
what I want to know now is how you are using the BigQuery. Can you show us?
Absolutely. What we tend to do is we work with small data sets first, and that allows us then to refine our SQL and get it into a state that we're happy with to push to production, and then really start working on big data sets. But we start small first, and of course that keeps our costs down as well, right?
Yeah, that's a good pattern. Develop your queries on small data, then scale it up as much as you need.
Exactly, yeah, and it's great as well. Like, so we're just running over maybe a few megabytes, even or a few 100,000 rows, and the responses are coming back in seconds. So it just allows us that rapid way of getting through our and building our SQL into that state. It's phenomenal. So that's the way we go. So what I want to show you is actually, this is one of our production queries, and it's not an overly complex SQL query. It's actually quite straightforward. We've got a few nested selects. We're pulling out our core columns that we want from the raw data tables. And what I really want to focus on though is the regular expressions down here. So what we touched on earlier, this is core to this project. We had to have this in there, and BigQuery gave us that ability to be able to go to that one column and slice and dice it up and pull out those values that we needed. And that's what you can see here in the SQL.
Okay. So you're taking all of these custom variables, transforming them into columns?
Correct, yeah. And I've got some joins here, and then we're just doing an aggregation on that. We're just grouping by all those columns, and we're just building these summary tables up, which are then given to the front end for the visualization.
Let's try it.
Absolutely. So this is the query. It's ready to run. You can see here in BigQuery's validation bar, we're about to process 6.04 meg, so we'll just have 6 meg, and it's about 47,000 rows. So this is actually a good window into how we work with BigQuery, working on the small data sets and then gradually ramping up.
That's nothing. Any database can do
Exactly,
that.
exactly.
But we can run our queries.
Absolutely.
They run in...
I'm going to pull the trigger. Okay.
Pull the trigger.
So this should just take, literally. We're going over 40-something thousand rows. It's 3.6 seconds. It's a cost of 0 cent, which is just...
You're using
great.
the strict plugin there, I can see.
Yeah, that's... You spotted that. I'm impressed. Yeah, that's cool.
Yes, Strict are very good friends of us. We did a video recently. Check it out.
Yeah, the Strict plugin just gives a few little niceties to the web UI. So I like to use, and you get the cost in there, and you're able to.
So now you have your aggregations, you have your new columns.
Yeah, exactly. So these are our summary. In essence, these are our summary tables. Now these result sets that you can see at the bottom here are our summary tables, and you can see we do have a few nulls in there, but we leave them out of the summary tables in the end. Then we've got our values coming out, and these are the values actually coming out of those regular expressions, and then we're remapping them and doing some aggregation on those values.
But this was only over 6 megabytes of data. How do you scale this up?
So what we do then is after we're happy with the SQL and we know it's working, we then ramp it up to about a month's worth of data. And that month's worth of data is about 2 billion rows or above. In some cases, we've got 2.5 to 3 billion rows. And then we're up in big data territory. So we're going from 500 gig to 750 up to a terabyte. And that's when it starts getting interesting.
Let's try it out.
So I've got this query here. It's the exact same query that I've just walked you through and shown you, but it's just pointing to a bigger table. So it's pointing to our raw 1 month's worth of data, and that data is about 2.2 billion rows. It's 2.2
billion rows?
2.2 billion rows. And I believe this table is somewhere in the region of about 3/4 of a terabyte to a terabyte.
I see.
So,
but we're only going here over...
Yeah, so we're correct. So what you've spotted is BigQuery is smart enough. It says, well, actually, I don't need to go over everything in the data set. I only need to go over the columns that you actually want me to work on in your SQL, and I'm actually only going to query, I'm only going to process 159 gig. So that's just great as well.
Let's run it.
So just to put this in perspective, 2.2 billion rows, 159 gig.
This was impossible for you a year ago?
We couldn't do this in the past. Okay, so we can see the queries running here now, and it's going over a serious amount of data. Okay. So I estimate that's going to take about, somewhere in the region, what we've seen in our log files takes about 25 to 30 seconds.
And you run these queries every day?
Correct. We've got an automation built into all this, and we're actually running 22 of these queries nightly on our data, because we have multiple summary tables and multiple aggregation tables for the front end to work with.
Yeah, and with those tables, you're able to present the data interactively later.
Correct.
Yeah.
So here you go. Here's our results. You can see that it took exactly 38 seconds. It processed 159 gig, which the validator said it would, and it came at a cost of 556 cents to us. And
that's the previous cost.
Correct.
Yes, prices have gone down a lot now.
85%.
85% now. Well,
yeah.
Pretty convenient for you.
Yeah, that's going to save us quite a bit of money on our clients.
That's cool. Yeah. And what do you do with this data? How do you transform this summary table in?
Yeah, so what we do now is that data and those summary tables, they're given to the front end, and the front end is now going to query those tables using the BigQuery API, the RESTful API, over a JavaScript web app.
Show me.
Absolutely, I'd love to show you. So this is the front end, And I'm just going to run the report on the basic demographics that we have, or the ones that we just pulled out, which is gender, location, age, income, and hour of the day.
Okay, so this is a JavaScript app that is loading data from BigQuery?
Correct. Yeah, and you can see that is still pretty quick.
And you're able to choose all the dimensions?
Yeah, so this is giving real insights into the data for our customers. So we're getting breakdowns of ad impressions by gender, rolling down into the location, so the states within Australia.
You have Australia there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see here that the impressions are pretty much in line with population or thereabouts, so nothing unbelievable insights in there.
Makes sense. What else do we have
What else
here?
have we got? So moving down, we've got age, so the various different impressions for the different age groups and the trend of the different click-through rates for the different ages. Further along, household income, and then hour a day. Hour a day's got some interesting information here. So what we can see is a pretty consistent set of impressions. So the blue line's pretty consistent over the period of time, and we see that red line increasing as the hour a day goes on, showing that for some reason around 4 o'clock, 3, 4 o'clock, we start to see more clicks on ads than we do at 10 o'clock in the morning.
So now finally you are able to understand, Telstra is able to understand what is happening.
Yeah, and we can provide that information back to the advertisers and agencies, and they get some real insight into how their targeting's working, what other targeting options they could be using. Yeah, and just information that they just never had before.
And they have an interactive app where they can go further down the...
They can run it whenever they want. It takes seconds to come back. Yeah, it's the whole picture.
Perfect. I love it. This is your application.
Yeah, that's it.
We're doing what we can you could never do before.
Right.
But you had a challenge for me.
Yeah, so on the back of this, we got really excited. Like this is something we'd never done before. But once Graham had written the blog and the conversation had started, I wanted to go bigger. I wanted a year's worth of data. If we can do it for a month, can we do it for a year? And this is where it started. So Graham then decided to pass that challenge on.
And that's when you decided to send a tweet.
Yeah, the tweet was sent and the challenge was set.
You loaded all the data.
Exactly, yeah. So we laid down the gauntlet to you and to BigQuery because we really wanted to see, could it handle a year's worth of data? Could it handle 30 terabytes?
How fast were you loading this data?
Yeah, so a month's worth of data takes about, actually it doesn't take, it takes 28 seconds. I timed it for one of the months, and that was, I think it was 2 billion rows.
2 billion rows?
In 28 seconds from Google Cloud Storage straight into BigQuery. So it took a few hours to get a year's worth of data in there.
Exactly.
But we got it in
pretty
there.
good.
Yeah, it's pretty quick. Yeah. And we're pretty happy with it.
And we're running the same query over 6 megabytes of data, over 230 megabytes of data.
Shall we do it?
Let's do it.
Are you excited?
Show me.
Okay, so we're going to ramp this up now. We're going from 6 to a few hundred gig, and now we're going up to 6.24 terabytes.
6.4 terabytes. Why is it 6.4 terabytes?
So it's 6.24 terabytes because, of course, BigQuery, like we touched on earlier, is smart enough to work out that the query itself isn't going over the whole data set, which is 30 terabytes, and it just needs to pull out those columns that we need.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah,
Very
so
cool.
It's still a huge amount of data, and
I know.
it's 36.6 billion rows that we're about to
36
query.
billion rows?
Yeah.
Will it run?
I hope so.
I'll do you can do the honors.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited.
And it's running. I think it will take more than 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's going to take a few minutes to run, which is still phenomenal.
Yeah. How are you using the web interface? Tell me more about.
So the web interface is used by our agencies and advertisers to be able to use those graphs in presentations that they provide back to their customers, the end advertisers, in reports and things that they use. I think some of the other things that we talk about here is that we've learnt a lot by using BigQuery, and we've learnt a lot of practice. We created a lot of data in the first place, and we created a large mess, and we needed to learn to clean up after ourselves. So a lot of this has been, we've introduced things like automated cleanups, closing down tables when we're not using them anymore, but also we're using the dashboard in of the BigQuery interface as a dashboard for our operations team. So we feed our logs of the success of the loads back into the tool, so that our operations guys can check those logs, check the size of the files that were processed, look for anomalies, and it becomes our day-to-day dashboard of data, really.
So you are using BigQuery not only to analyze all this data, you are using it to analyze your operations.
Operationalize, yeah, absolutely. And then obviously on top of that, we've got that data in there. So quite often now when the business come and go, I'd really like to know how many people over 65 have been to site X between the hours of 2 and 4. And this is things that we could never answer before. But the product people really need that information for pricing purposes. We can now do that. We just run an ad hoc query using the web interface, and we've got the results in seconds. So it created a whole new set of opportunities for us.
Oh yes, and now you have all the new features. You have the price reductions, streaming. I want to see what you can do with that.
Yeah, we've got some big plans for streaming already. So with streaming at only 1,000 requests a second, it was a bit limiting for us. But with the announcements yesterday, that's opened a whole new world of possibilities to us.
100,000 rows per second.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is even with the challenge of the big 36 billion row. What this has led us to understand is how much data we've got, how valuable that is, and we're even now looking with the business about the different contexts in which that data could be used. Now with the price drops as well, this makes it even more appealing. We can run more data, look for more insights across more domains. So we're looking outside of just ad serving now. We're looking at being able to use this data in many other contexts within Telstra.
Yeah, I like it. You will bring it to other clients.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
We still have the query running here.
So it's still going.
Yes.
We've got to bear in mind it's crunching a serious amount of data here.
I know, we're going over 7 terabytes of data.
Correct.
We're running a regular expression.
Correct.
We are grouping.
Correct.
We are using distributed grouping. We're sharding it.
Correct.
Well, I presume you are. We don't have to worry about that. That's a great thing. Now, one of the big things that we found with this as well was, with its SQL-like interface, it just created a massive, it brought down that barrier to entry. We could get going on this without necessarily knowing about the underlying technology that's having to be in place to run it. We're not having to worry about the log files and the disk that they're stored on. We're not having to worry about who's cleaning those up, how much, other than how much it costs us when the data's in there. All that headache and problem that we'd had before has gone away. And
you're not going back to your previous data.
No, that's never going back.
How's it running?
So we're up at 230 seconds now. And so I've got a feeling it's getting close now to the end.
Close. Have you run this query before?
There was a point in time a few weeks ago when I was getting prepared that we did have some data in there, and I just couldn't resist having a look and running the query. But I only did it over a smaller data set. I didn't do it on this volume of data.
Yes. Well, let's wait and see. Any parting points?
No, I mean, the announcements yesterday across the cloud board were, for me, really exciting to hear. It's really stepping up the opportunities for BigQuery and the other Google products into the enterprise market where we do most of our work, and our clients will be really interested to see what we can do with the technologies on offer now.
You were featured in the Wall Street Journal yesterday too.
Yeah, we managed to get a line in there. When the Wall Street journalist was trying to quantify what the price difference was and how that compared to other offerings in the marketplace, we were able to give him a real-world example of our 36 billion row query, which was going to cost us $248,
yeah,
and now would cost us less than 40. So we were able to give him that real-world example, and he was kind enough to publish it.
We are at
320 seconds.
That's like 5 minutes, and it's still running.
And it's still going.
Should we go to a break? Should we wait until it finishes?
Up to you guys.
It's finished!
All right, so we just processed 6.24 terabytes in 334 seconds. So BigQuery did its job.
Yay!
High five.
That's exciting.
That's awesome.
We went over the big table, 38 billion rows. We can now see a whole year of data.
This is a whole year of data, yeah. So this is, of course, the aggregation table here in its raw format inside BigQuery. So what I can do is I can flip back over and maybe we can have a look at what insights that data is now giving us over a year. So I'm just going to knock off the other ones, and I'm just going to take these two graphs. So
and you're running the same app now, over a year of data, you are able to see.
Correct.
Going over a month was a dream. Going over a year was impossible.
This is new for us. This is
it opened up new possibilities. So we started to look at what could we get, what insights could we get about our data over an entire year. We've got some trend graphs here showing our male and female viewers across the different sites, so across our entire network, and we see that during the Australian sporting season, around February-March time, we start to ramp up the number of male users, but our female users keeps kind of constant, and back at the end of the football season, the user base declines.
This is awesome. I love those graphs. Thank you very much, Ram. Thank you very much, Luke.
Thanks,
I
Felipe.
hope to see you again.
Thank you, Felipe.
Thanks very much.
The challenge has been run, everything worked out. I'm so happy. This is awesome, and please stay curious.